The lore.
Our story
Vaati Vidya.
doesn't begin in the lands between. It begins in the cosmos, far away, with an outer god called the Greater Will. There are a lot of outer gods mentioned in Elden Ring. You can think of these kind of like the Great Ones of Bloodborne. They're distant beings.
I don't know
They're
what
all
that is.
powerful and they're quite unknowable by design. But many of these outer gods want to make their presence felt in the world. The Greater Will, maybe most of all. To this end, it
So
sent
Greater
a
Will,
golden star
Is it
hurtling
the
towards
only outer god?
the lands between. The Elden Star's incantation tells us that this golden star, the Elden Star, maybe most of all.
Okay.
To this end, it sent a golden star hurtling towards the lands between. The Elden Star's incantation tells us that this golden star was bearing a beast, an Elden beast. The Elden Remembrance calls it a vassal beast of the Greater Will. If you didn't know, a vassal is someone who holds land on behalf of their overlord. Obviously, this is fitting in this case, because the Elden Beast occupied the lands between on behalf of the Greater Will, and was a living incarnation of the concept of order.
That fight was so underwhelming.
As such, this beast would later become the Elden Ring. The Elden Ring itself
What? So that beast was an incarnation of the Greater Will and would become the Elden Ring. How? Okay. The Elden Ring,
is made up of runes of power, some great, some small,
like
that
Frostmourne.
together represent a sort of logic for the world to follow.
Okay.
Thus, the Elden Ring represents order. The true nature of this order is a subject of constant debate and research undergone by fundamentalists. But two of the key fundamentals are the laws of causality and regression. You can think of the law of causality as cause and effect, where actions have consequences, and those consequences are new causes that branch out into infinity. These are the relationships between things. Then there's the law of regression that states that all things eternally yearn to converge and return to their roots. Fittingly, then, the Elden Ring is housed within the Erdtree, which towers over the lands between.
Did we not have these laws before the Elden Ring inscribed the laws into the runes? What about before there was the Greater Will? What was going on? Was there not causality? Was there not regression then? How did the Elden Ring bring in these things to the world?
But it's very important to stress that life in the lands between did not begin with the Erdtree, the Elden Ring, or the Elden Beast. No, the lands between were occupied well before the Greater Will came. There were other beings here. There were other factions here.
Right.
There were other gods here.
What were they
there was
doing?
even another great tree here before the Erdtree.
What?
And
That
this
was
is
the
where
other
a
tree?
huge twist regarding the Erdtree comes in. So, there are incantations in the game.
Oh my god! It's like Hellfrog, medium. Oh my god, what?
Tree here before the Erdtree.
Yeah.
And this is where a huge twist regarding the Erdtree comes in. So, there are incantations in the game called aspects of the Crucible. According to their
Oh, it's so
descriptions,
dumb.
these are manifestations of the Erdtree's
Well, you can get the tail?
primal vital energies.
Give you a big ass tail to smack people with.
And I quote, "They are an aspect of the primordial crucible where all life was once blended together." But how could all life be blended together in the Erdtree if the Erdtree appeared after life existed?
I feel like I remember reading some text that said that people used to have dragon scales in the times when things were good. Is that why you could sprout out a big tail with the magic? Okay, let's back up because that was really distracting.
Primal vital energies. And I quote, "They are an aspect of the primordial crucible where all life was once blended together."
Okay.
But how could all life be blended together in the Erdtree if the Erdtree appeared after life existed? Well, there can only be one answer, right? That the Erdtree is a parasite, and it took
What?
over a tree that existed here before.
What?
This ancient tree was called the Great Tree. So the Great Tree was almost certainly the location of this primordial crucible, and it must have been a very powerful primordial force for the Greater Will to have commandeered.
There was another tree, but this, the tree from beyond replaced it as a parasite upon the land?
It might even be the reason the Lands Between is important to the Greater Will in the first place. It also explains why spells and enemies related to the Great Tree's crucible would eventually be looked down upon. For example, the Knot Talisman is fashioned from a knotted vestige of the crucible, and it was considered a signifier of the divine in ancient times, but is now increasingly disdained as an impurity as civilization has advanced. Enemies related to the crucible are the Omen, the Misbegotten, and the Crucible Knights, and all three of them would be shunned, enslaved, or imprisoned. Those who speak for the Erdtree don't want you to know its roots, so to speak. According to the spell, protection of the Erdtree, in the beginning everything was in opposition to the Erdtree, but through countless victories in war, it became the embodiment of order.
In Marika's own words, the Erdtree governs all. The choice is thine. Become one with the order, or divest thyself of it. To wallow at the fringes, a powerless upstart.
But the Greater Will needed more than a big tree. It needed loyal agents in the Lands Between. To this end, it has the Two Fingers, who are its envoys. The Two Fingers heirloom has a weird picture of them, but it reads, "Of course, fingers cannot speak, yet these are eloquent. Persistently they wriggle, spelling out mysteries in the air. Thus did we gain the words of our faith."
Fingers count. Sometimes a finger can speak. If you do that. Anyway.
These words are interpreted by the finger readers. These are the undying old crones that you would have found throughout the Lands Between. They pass down the wisdom of the Two Fingers, or at least they used to.
Your fingers, please, your fingers. I can read them.
Most of them appear to have lost their purpose, and they're desperate to read your fingers and tell you annoying riddles, since their Two Fingers are likely dead. And yes, of course, there are multiple sets of Two Fingers. You would have found their corpses on the tops of the divine towers.
Yeah.
Atop these towers, you loot the fingers in order to activate the true power of a great rune.
Yeah, totally. I know all about activating great runes. I did that tons of times. Yeah, I've done it.
Specifically, though, you are giving benediction back to your great rune. You're taking a blessing back from the two dead fingers, essentially. This is just one of many blessings that the Two Fingers can bestow, and my point is kind of that the Two Fingers clearly have more than just influence. They have real power on some level. The Greater Will.
Man, why is this so hairy, though? I just double-checked my finger to see if there's hair on it. I don't think anybody gets hair on their fingers, right? Like, do guys? No. I don't think. You do. Boys have it? Will you show me your... Maybe it's peeled skin.
Will needs these powerful...
Let's not derail the video, okay?
On some level. The Greater Will needs these powerful envoys and agents because, while it's obviously incredibly powerful, it does seem limited by a few things. First is space. The Greater Will didn't come...
That was super distracting. Okay.
Just influence. They have real power on some level. The Greater
Yes.
Will needs these powerful envoys and agents because, while it's obviously incredibly powerful, it does seem limited by a few things.
Okay, but why are they giant fingers? Where are they coming from? Where's the rest of the hand and body? I thought that the Greater Will sent the beast, which makes sense because it's like the starry thing. But where are all these giant fingers coming from? Is he gonna explain this?
Just influence. They have real power on some level.
Right.
The Greater Will
Right.
needs these powerful envoys and agents because, while it's obviously incredibly powerful, it does seem limited by a few things. First is space. The Greater
Space.
Will didn't come to the lands between itself, it sent an elden beast to do its bidding
Right.
instead.
The vassal.
Second is time. There is a moment later in the game where your pair of two fingers go still because they're forced to commune with the Greater Will for guidance.
It's like an
When they
antenna
are finished,
on a
the
TV.
fingers will again offer their guidance. But thousands, if not tens of thousands, of moons must first pass. No matter for me. But you, how
Okay.
will you ever manage the wait?
So the fingers were really like, hold up. Like we do when you're checking with your, like when the Secret Service is checking with their person talking to them on their headset.
So the Greater Will needs a physical manifestation of order. It needs envoys to convey its will,
Hold
but
up.
what it also needs is a god. Introducing Marika the Eternal. I have this utterly enormous mind map of Elden Ring's lore, and there's a reason
What the
she's at the
fuck?
center. She's essentially the equivalent
Hold up. You're just gonna casually show that and then act like it's not a big deal. And that's perfectly normal. You can't just do that. Oh, yeah, I have this gigantic mind map that connects to everything that exists in the game, but it's no biggie anyway. The
is a
fuck?
god. Introducing Marika the Eternal. I have this utterly enormous mind map of Elden Ring's lore, and
You
there's a
are-
reason she's at the center. She's essentially the equivalent of Gwyn from Dark Souls, except unlike
I don't
Gwyn,
know
Marika
Gwyn.
didn't just crawl out of the dark and find power. To an extent, it seems like she earned it. We don't know much about her origins, except that she is of the Newman race, which is actually an origin that you can choose in the character selection
I
screen.
picked that.
Newman come from outside the lands between, and are supposed descendants of denizens of another world, long-lived but seldom born. At some point, Marika was chosen as an
Think bad.
Empyrean. What is an Empyrean? Well, an Empyrean is a being chosen by the fingers as a candidate for godhood. As an Empyrean, Marika received the aid of a shadow to do her bidding. So what is a shadow? Well, it's a wolf, shadowbound to its Empyrean by the two fingers.
A dog. It's her pet.
Luna Princess Rani is another example of an Empyrean with a shadowbound
She
beast.
also has a dog. Yes. Oh, he was a good boy.
You would have met Blythe. These creatures are the Empyrean's very own shadow. They are completely loyal to their needs and, by definition, incapable of treachery.
It couldn't.
Marika's shadow was a beast called Malakath. Every Empyrean uses their shadow in different ways, but Marika's sole
That was
need
hard.
of her shadow was as a vessel to lock away destined death. So what is destined death?
Okay.
Called Malakath. Every Empyrean uses their shadow in different ways, but Marika's sole need of her shadow was as a vessel to lock away destined death.
Okay. So, two fingers choose a person as a candidate for godhood. When they do this, they also assign you a helpful puppy as a pet. And they also tell you what you need to use the puppy to help yourself do, what your quest is, your main goal. In the case of Marika, she needed to use the shadow to lock away destined death. And what I'm asking is, this is a quest given to her by the fingers? Or Is this something she decided to do on her own?
So what is destined death? Well, according to
No. She decided to do it herself. Okay. 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 That's helpful. Thank you.
Enya, it's the rune of death.
The
The
rune of death goes by two names.
The rune on the Elden Ring.
The other is destined death.
We mentioned earlier that the Elden Ring is made up of
Right.
runes,
You
and
said the runes
at some
on the
point,
ring.
maybe when she was chosen as a god, Marika plucked the rune of death from the Elden Ring. She gave the rune of death to Malekith, her totally loyal shadow, who bore a black blade imbued with this rune. It's kind of genius, really. In a single act, she removed the concept of death from the lands between, while also commanding total control of death through her shadow, who could deliver it at her whim.
Wow, that's really badass and smart.
Now, some of you might be asking, if death
That's
is
a
removed
great
from the
idea.
lands between, how come I can kill this dog? First off,
Wait a minute. Wait, what the? How can you just pluck things off of the Elden Ring? How can you just take stuff, runes, like, that seems like a pretty important piece out of it? Why didn't other people that were chosen for godhood also decide to do this? Couldn't they also just do whatever the hell they wanted with the runes? If anybody can just take off what, maybe I decided I want to take off causality just to f around. Maybe I've been chosen for godhood and I decide I'm going to put causality in my pocket. Could I do that? If I was a goddess. No. Marika could because she was the god chosen by the greater will. So were there any other people that were chosen? She won. Okay. Okay. Because she won. But I thought that, okay, so they only picked one. There were candidates, but she was the one they decided on. Okay.
shame on you. Second, from a lore point of view, that dog isn't really dead. It's simply in the process of its spirit, or its soul, returning to the Erdtree. Catacomb dungeons, for example, are specifically constructed near the roots of the Great Tree for this reason, so that
It's not really dead.
its soul returning to the Erdtree.
Is that why? What does it mean when I get runes when the enemy dies? What kind of runes is that?
Catacomb dungeons, for example, are specifically constructed near the roots of the Great Tree for this reason, so that the Erdtree can reabsorb their ashes back into it.
What? I need to hear that again.
Between, how come I can kill this dog? First off, shame on you. Second, from a lore point of view, that dog isn't really dead. It's simply in the process of its spirit, or its soul, returning to the Erdtree. Catacomb dungeons, for example, are
So the soul will return to the Erdtree because the death has been locked away by
specifically
Marika
constructed
in Malekith.
near the roots of the Great Tree for this reason, so that the Erdtree can reabsorb their ashes back into it. This process replaced the concept of a death that you were destined to have. But this random spirit
Why are all these people climbing on the roots and like what's going? Why are all the dead
reabsorbed
bodies
their ashes
like
back
that
into it. This process replaced the concept
in the roots? All creepy like that, like.
of a death that you were destined to have.
Maybe it's like if you know you're gonna die, then you should die as quickly, as close as possible to the tree, so that you will, like, will you be reborn, or does it mean your soul just lives on in the tree?
But this random spirit outside of a catacomb dungeon says it best.
Proper death means returning to the Erdtree. Have patience until the time comes and the roots
As another
call
example
to
of
you.
this theory, when you kill a major boss, you receive a remembrance of them.
Yes.
These are spirits, and they are hewn into the Erdtree. In this way, thanks to the Erdtree's grace, their spirits are immortalized, in a sense. This new form of death also explains what's happening when you summon spirits.
From ash and return to the Erdtree.
However, some spirits never return to the Erdtree, and they rise within death as corpses or skeletons instead.
Why not? Why don't they return? To refuse the Erdtree's call to return. Can you choose not to?
So this was the new order, and it's important to stress that it was in this moment, when the rune of death was removed, when destined death was taken, this is when order became the golden order.
The forbidden shadow plucked from the golden order upon its creation.
Specifically, this was Marika's golden order.
Yeah.
So not only did she become a god and a vessel for the Elden Ring, she became renowned as Marika the Eternal for her removal of destined death. It was a huge part of her character and her reign as well. However, Marika had more than just death to conquer. She had wars to fight, as the world was occupied by many forces that could threaten her golden order. There was war with the Storm Lord, who likely ruled over Stormvale, and there was a war with the Giants, who were masters of a flame that could burn the Erdtree. There was war with the ancient dragons, who incidentally had stones that could twist time and thus slay a god. And finally, there was war brewing with the Carrion royalty, who had previously obeyed laws which contravened the Golden Order.
But if she's at war with these other factions in the lands between, then don't they also benefit from her removal of destined death? Like, if she killed the enemy, they also, their spirit should return to the Erdtree also. Yeah? So, that's...
Thus, sort of similar to how the Greater Will needed an Empyrean to enforce its will, Marika herself needed someone to wage war. So, there was to be a husband, a consort, an Elden Lord. The man chosen was Hoarah, a ferocious warrior who became known as the Lord of the Battlefield. His crown was warranted with strength, and while it was for this strength that Marika married him, he was also required to take a vow to conduct himself as a lord. To suppress the ceaseless lust for battle that raged within, Hoarah took the beast regent Sarosh upon his back. You'll notice this is another example of a beast being given for the purpose of serving order.
That's the enemy he had. That's the thing that he had on his back. I remember that.
In this moment, Lord, to suppress the ceaseless lust for battle that raged within, Hoarah took the beast regent Sarosh upon his back. You'll notice this is another example of a beast being given for the purpose of serving order. Thus, in this moment, he went from being Hoarah, warrior, to Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, consort to Queen Marika, and a certified demigod. Godfrey and Marika had 3 demigod children together. There was Godwyn the Golden, who you saw being killed in the opening trailer, and there were also the reviled Omen twins, Morgoth, who guards the Erdtree, and Mohg, who became Lord of Blood. You might think that Godric was another demigod child, but he actually wasn't. Instead...
Okay, this is a lot. First of all, Godfrey, no. Yeah.
Godfrey and Marika had 3 demigod children together. There was Godwyn the
Golden. What about this guy? So he was killed in the opening trailer, and then what? I thought, okay, getting rid of destined death, it doesn't mean that he can't be killed. Like, he was killed, but it just means that his spirit is immortalized in the tree. So it still really sucks for her that he was killed.
Golden, who you saw being killed in the opening trailer.
But can you commune with these spirits from the tree
they were all
outside of just echoes of their spirits as personified through like summons?
So the reviled Omen twins, Morgoth, who guards the Erdtree,
Morgoth.
and Moog, who became
No.
Lord of Blood. You
Not
might
cool.
think that Godric was another demigod child, but he actually wasn't. Instead, he was probably descended from Godwyn. Anyway,
Rachel.
we'll talk about the demigods more in detail in another video, so subscribe for that.
Okay.
But for now, just know that Godfrey and his offspring were the first demigods, henceforth known as the Golden Lineage. In his wars, Godfrey led his 16 Crucible Knights into battle, who were named so for they fought with the primordial powers of the Erdtree. Their incantations were aspects of the Crucible itself, and they likely fought giants, dragons, the Stormlord, and more to usher in their age, the age of the Erdtree.
In Marika's own words, "Hark, brave warriors. Hark, my lord Godfrey. We commend your deeds. Guidance hath delivered ye through each ordeal to the place ye stand. Put the giants to the sword and confine the flame atop the mount. Let a new epoch begin, an epoch glistening with life. Brandish the Elden Ring for the age of the Erdtree."
The Erdtree would go on to be largely seen as a blessing for all of those in the lands between, especially those close to it in Leyndell, the capital city of the Erdtree. The tree bestowed blessings. For example, the dew that dropped from its branches were like jewels.
The seeds
it
are
loomed
really good.
overhead as a constant reminder of order, and its roots reached far and wide, relieving many of the burden of death. In fact, Erdtree burial was one of the highest honors
It
a
seems
hero
like a good
could
thing.
receive. One by one, the previous factions of the world fell. The giants were put to the sword, and their fell god was killed by Marika herself. The ancient dragons broke down the walls of Leyndell, but met fierce retaliation. However, I think the House of the Erdtree encountered the most trouble against the land to their southwest, Leonia. Here, the House of the Moon repelled their offensives time and time again, and I mean that literally, because there was not just one but two wars fought here, and in both of these, there was no victory for the Golden nor for the Moon. And
was a
I
draw?
suspect it was probably because of these lobsters. These damn things can snipe you from like a mile away, and it's bullshit. Actually, it was probably because of the Carrier Knights, who, according to their weapons, were able to wield sorcerous battle skills, and despite numbering fewer than 20,
It's
this
because they were cheating with magic.
power made them a match for even the champions of gold
They were
in
fucking
battle.
cheating.
These enchanted knights were anointed by the Lunar Queen, a young astrologer who went on to establish the House of Caria as royalty in this land. With her bewitching lunar magic, she won over the Academy of
Look at that.
Caria, where
Absolute
glintstone
bullshit.
sorcery was studied, and united the Carian royal family and the learned scholars of Caria defended their home from the golden aggressors. At the head of this great golden army was Radagon.
Lord Radagon was a great champion, possessed of flowing red locks. He came to these lands at the head of a great
Oh.
golden host
Oh.
when he met Lady Renala in battle.
These two champions clashed, fell in love, and joined their houses.
Radagon once
That's hot.
cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Renala. The order of the Erdtree and the fate of the moon were conjoined,
That's beautiful.
and all the wounds of war forgiven.
You might think it's
Yes.
strange that the Greater Will would permit this
good.
union, but it's not too odd, all things considered. As with most From Software games, sorcery and faith are just two sides of the same coin, and both of these powers stem from the cosmos. Radagon and Renala were known to have 3 children together. Lunar Princess Rani, who inherited her mother's propensity for lunar magic, Radan, who took after his father Radagon and would go on to master gravitational magic,
Radon is Radagon's kid. Rani is his kid.
and Rykard, who pioneered new
Dude, I better buy some wrapping paper and tape myself up in it, like today or tomorrow. It's Thursday? Is the DLC? Yeah, like I have everything else ready for this. Everything else is good to go. I have all the prosthetics, all the face paint, all this crazy. All I need is the tube.
hex sorceries and would go on to feed himself to a great serpent.
I'll never forget
It
this.
follows that at some point after this, Marika began to harbor doubts. Doubts about the Golden Order that she had had a hand in creating.
In Marika's own words, I
Wait.
declare my
Who was having doubts?
Serpent. It follows
Wait.
that
Also,
Dan, who pioneered new hex sorceries
Rykard was
and
also Radagon's kid.
would go on to feed himself to a great serpent.
Okay.
It follows that at some point after this, Marika began to harbor doubts. Doubts about the Golden Order that she had had a hand in creating.
in Marika's own
Interesting.
words,
Very interesting.
I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order through understanding of the proper way. Our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are long past. My comrades, why must ye falter?
And it's at this point that we should talk about Marika's motivations, her character. This is surely going to be one of those huge points of debate in the coming years, but for now, my working theory is that she wanted to discover the truth behind order and the truth behind the greater will, and she believed that bonds had to be broken so that they could be better understood. Believed that bonds had to be broken so that they could be better understood. She believed that there was great meaning to be found in hardship.
Based.
Queen Marika has high hopes for us, that we continue to struggle unto eternity.
For Lord Godfrey, his struggle ended at the end of his campaigns. According to his armor, he led the war against the giants, faced the Storm Lord alone, and then there came a moment when his last worthy enemy fell. And it was then, as the story is told, that the hue of Lord Godfrey's eyes faded. In truth, he was robbed of his grace. Then Marika sent him away.
My lord, and thy warriors,
What?
I divest each of thee of thy grace. With thine eyes dimmed, ye will be driven from the lands between. Ye will wage war in a land afar,
What?
where ye will live and die.
This became known as the Long March of the Tarnished, as Godfrey and his tarnished descendants walked away from the lands between. But Queen Marika absolutely had a plan here, that Lord Godfrey and his descendants would one day return stronger, having struggled outside of grace.
Then, after thy death, I will give back what I once claimed, return to the lands between, wage war, and brandish the Elden Ring, grow strong in the face of death. Warriors of my lord, Lord Godfrey.
Soon after, she found
What? Okay. Okay. I might need. I sometimes need to listen to this section again just to make sure that I have understood it correctly. But she took their grace away and said, leave because it's easy mode for you. It's too easy. You're getting, like, you need hardship to get good. So therefore, go outside the lands between and fight in the face of death, and it's to make you strong. Then come back, and then I'll give you grace again. Is this right?
there came a moment when his last
What the
worthy enemy
fuck?
fell, and it was then, as the story is told, that the hue of Lord Godfrey's eyes faded.
She
In
really?
truth, he was robbed of his grace. Then Marika sent him
What
away.
is going on?
My lord, and thy warriors, I divest each of thee
Oh my god.
of thy grace. With thine eyes dimmed, ye will be driven from the lands between. Ye will wage war in a land afar, where ye will live and die.
This became known as the
You could have a spin-off about each person in the land afar, like what that lifetime was like for them. And you're like, you have to die at the end.
Long March of the Tarnished, as Godfrey and his tarnished descendants walked away from the lands between.
So he also had tarnished descendants that left.
But Queen Marika absolutely had a plan
With him.
here, that Lord Godfrey and his descendants would one
So
day
she's gonna
return
resurrect
stronger,
him after he
having
died?
struggled outside of grace.
Then, after
Then-
thy death,
Yeah, I'll give back what
I
I
will
can.
give back what I once claimed.
Sounds like she can
Return
res.
to the lands between, wage war, and brandish the Elden
Holy
Ring. Grow strong in the face of death, warriors of my lord, Lord Godfrey.
So grow strong in the face of death definitely implies that maybe she had some doubts. Like maybe taking death away made people weak. That's what that implies.
Soon after, she found a new husband. Either that or a new husband was found for her.
When Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was hounded from the lands
I
between,
can't believe she did that.
Radagon left Rennala to return to the Erdtree capital,
No
becoming
way.
Queen Marika's second.
Wait. So Radagon heard she sent Godfrey away. And he's like, "Oh shit." That's I mean,
husband and king consort,
this,
taking the
he got cucked.
title of second Elden Lord. The mystery endures to this day as to why Lord Radagon would cast Lady Rennala aside,
I'll tell you why. She called him sweeting one too many times.
and moreover, why a mere champion would be chosen for the seat of Elden Lord.
Whatever the case, as a part of this union,
Radagon's
Radagon's
sexy.
prior 3 children with Rennala became demigod stepchildren, granted grace thanks to their new family tree. Rennala was broken by this, and so was her country,
That's
Leonia.
horrible, yeah.
The queen
I feel bad for her. So their kids was Rani, Radon, and Rykard.
set reads, when Rennala, head of both the Academy of Raya Lucaria and the Carian royal family, lost her husband Radagon, her heart went along with him.
Man, that sucks for her. I feel really bad for her, man.
And then those at the Academy realized that Rennala was no champion after all. In the wake of Radagon's betrayal and Rennala's poor judgment, Leonia struggled with civil war, with the Academy of Raya Lucaria on one side and the Carian royals on the other. And it's here, during the age of the Erdtree, that Lunar Princess Rani, daughter of Rennala and Radagon, stole a fragment of the Rune of Death.
Man,
It
people keep
happened
plucking
during the
that thing.
golden age of the Erdtree, long before the Shattering of the Elden Ring. Someone stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith, the Black Blade.
A
As
fragment.
mentioned previously, Malekith was Marika's shadow, and he had sealed destined death in a black blade.
Right,
Then
right.
a fragment, only a fragment, of this Rune of Death was stolen. And once this happened, Malekith went a step further in protecting destined death. He bound the blade within his own flesh, such that none might rob death ever again. It was too late, however. This fragment of the Rune of Death was used immediately, that night, to kill a demigod, Marika's own son.
She did it. She used the fragment to kill Godwyn. She did it to kill Godwyn. What?
The Golden.
That was the first recorded death of
That's
a
how she really made sure she killed him for real, though. What the
in all history, and it became the catalyst. Soon, the Elden Ring was smashed, and thus sprang forth the war known as the Shattering.
Okay. Okay.
And it became the catalyst.
Okay, wait.
The golden.
That was the first recorded death of a demigod in all history, and it became the catalyst. Soon, the Elden Ring was smashed, and thus sprang forth the war known as the Shattering.
Then, the Elden Ring smashed.
Now, there
Who smashed the Elden Ring?
is a lot of really credible evidence that Marika was behind this plot to have a fragment of the Rune of Death stolen.
What? No, she wouldn't. She wouldn't. You think Marika herself would be behind a plot to have a fragment stolen? But what
There's
about her
also
son?
a ton of evidence
But her
that
own son. She wouldn't want that to happen to.
Marika is behind the entirety of your Tarnished quest, but we'll talk about that in another video.
Another video.
For now, all you really need to know, in terms of the timeline at least, is this.
Okay.
After the marriage of Marika and Radagon, and after a fragment of the Rune of Death was stolen, Marika went on to shatter the
shattered
Elden
it.
Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it, to no avail.
Marika shattered it, and then I do remember that now. The Elden Ring reveal trailer where she shattered the Elden Ring. Yeah. Yes.
The Elden Ring had been broken into runes.
But why? Why would she do that?
Is this. After the marriage of Marika and Radagon, and after a fragment of the Rune of Death was stolen, Marika
We don't know. After her son was murdered, she was pissed. Why did he say that she could have been behind the plot to have the fragment stolen? That didn't make any sense to me. I would need a lot more information for that. Could it be that she had these doubts about whether the changes that she made were really good, by like, as indicated by her saying, like, basically implying that the living without death made people weak. Maybe at that point she started to have doubts about it. And then after this happened, well, I don't know. Let me just listen.
went on to shatter the Elden Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it, to no avail. The Elden Ring had been broken into runes, some great and some small.
You know, it's said that Lord Radagon harbored a secret. A famed sculptor of the Erdtree capital was once summoned to render Lord Radagon's likeness in giant stature, when he glimpsed the skeleton in Radagon's closet. And as such, it's said the great statue harbors his secret too.
What?
Of course,
secret?
the huge twist in Elden Ring is that Radagon is Marika, or depending on what you believe, he became
Yeah,
her.
that's the thing I was really confused about when I fought him. I'm like, that's what that seems to be implying, but at the time I'm thinking, I don't know enough about this to be sure. You see, this changes, and I was just like, oh, I don't want to make any assumptions right now because I don't know.
Giant stature when he glimpsed
Yeah.
the skeleton in Radagon's closet. And as such, it's said the great statue harbors his secret
Statue harbors
too.
his secret
Of course,
too.
the huge twist in Elden Ring is that Radagon is Marika, or depending on what you believe, he became her, for she knew it was going to happen.
In Marika's own words, O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god.
Thou art yet to become me. Maybe she was just tired.
Let us be shattered, both. Mine other self.
You can tell when From Software is keeping something a little bit open-ended, and of everything in Elden Ring's lore, this will also go on to be one of the biggest unknowns as we move forward. For example, the wording, thou art yet to become me, reinforces that Marika and Radagon were two separate entities before the Shattering.
Yes, does sound
However,
like that.
in contrast, there is also evidence that Radagon was always part of Marika. For example, Enya says that
The demigods are each and all the
Radagon was always. I don't know.
direct offspring of Queen Marika.
but how can this be if Radagon married Renala and
Yeah.
had those demigod children?
I don't think that's.
The only way that makes sense is if Radagon was always Marika and he just went over there to seduce Renala long ago. I'll present more concrete theories in the future, but on this matter, the most important thing is, what do you think?
What? Was Radagon always Marika? Always. Even when chosen as a god by the fingers, like, could you deceive the greater will in that way? That's so galaxy brain. It's kind of hard to. It's really difficult to imagine. I don't know. I think this is a part of lore that's supposed to be lost to time and twisted into many different beliefs. It sounds like she like became infused with him. Like she just let herself be absorbed into him. That's what that seems like.
While you can figure out a ton of Elden Ring's story, not all of it is open to interpretation. Certain things are, and this is one of them. And your
Okay.
interpretation is a
Basically,
big part
no one
of
knows.
what makes this story special.
No one has any idea right
At any
now.
rate, the union of Radagon and Marika seems to be a union of two fundamental opposing laws of the Golden Order. We mentioned these laws earlier, actually. There's the law of causality, and Marika is an agent of cause and effect. And there's the law of regression, as Radagon is a character who aspires to be complete and regress together. So I have a theory that forcing these two beings that represent these concepts together would have corrected Marika's deviance. But even so, she was imprisoned in the Erdtree for the crime of the Shattering.
Marika's trespass demanded a heavy sentence. But even in shackles, she remains a god and the vision's vessel.
The conjoined Radagon and Marika even had two demigod children of their own, Mikola and Millennia. These two children were born afflicted. Mikola was cursed with eternal childhood, and Millennia harbored a horrific rot within.
Yeah.
Even so, these two children were both chosen as Empyreans, They were immensely sacred beings and eligible to inherit godhood from the greater will. Perhaps the greater will was just desperate to find a worthy successor, and indeed in the Shattering War to come, many would try to claim the shards of the Elden Ring, and they would try to take the throne, including, of course, the Tarnished, who returned from their long march at long last, which we'll talk about in the next main lore video.
So you are coming back from this long march.
I should probably also mention here that if you become a patron, you'll see upcoming lore videos early, as that's one of the rewards you get if you pledge to the $3 tier. And if you think my channel really adds a lot of value to the Souls games for you, to the point where you pledge $20, then in this new tier, you'll receive a new mug every 3 months that has a unique design on it to do with the games by From Software. There are 4 to collect. The first one you'll get is inspired by Dark Souls, then Elden Ring, then Sekiro, and finally Bloodborne. And they all have fantastic art that I worked on with an amazing artist named Chu. But anyway, I figured this is the right place to end this video because the information here is going to be overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
I bet it probably was too overwhelming, you know?
Yes.
It took me ages to commit these names and the relationships they had with other characters to memory, so I hope you guys are doing all right. One thing that helped me a lot was that we designed an enormous mind map with pretty much all of Elden Ring's lore, all of its item descriptions, all of its dialogues, all of the relationships between characters that we can think of. We added all of this together and it helped a ton in learning about the story and visualizing it all. And one day I will make this asset available to you all because I think after doing it, I think this is the quintessential way to piece together the story, and I think giving you guys this asset eventually will make that accessible for people. So I'm really excited about that. I want to thank Absa and Zard for accepting the paid task of helping me put all the raw data into this mind map so that I could better understand everything. I want to thank Paragod for fulfilling all of my footage requests and creating so many cinematic scenes for this video and for you all to enjoy. And I last of all want to thank John Devlin for the incredible thumbnail. And of course, thank you for watching.
Amazing. This was such a journey and so cool.